Thank you.
Hi, ma'am. Yes. Good evening, everybody. So I am Paolo Montaño Tagalugin. I was once the IERC secretary, and I was actually working closely with Doc Robles back then when we were trying to establish the Ethics Review Committee and when we were trying to draft the standard operating procedure, which is right now serves as the basis for the operations as well as how we formulate our decisions in the ethics review committee. So it's important that we are able to adhere to the standard operating procedures because again, we need to uphold to again integrity as well as the ethical principles. That's why we need to stick with what we've written to the standard operating procedures, and we should not be able to deviate from the standard operating procedures. Everybody later once you receive or once we get your application for ethical clearance, Abdel will inform me about the submission or application for ethical clearance, and then we will try to decide if the application would warrant an exemption for review, or if it would require expedited review or full review. But anyway, allow me to introduce to you first the MSU General Santos Institutional Ethics Review Committee. So the official name of the ethics board of the university is Mindanao State University General Santos City IERC, or Institutional Ethics Review Committee, wherein it's an independent committee created to oversee and protect the safety and welfare of its study participants. So I'd like to stress out that this committee is independent because our decisions will not be influenced by any other offices, because we really want to make sure that we adhere to the ethical principles as well as adhere to the standard operating procedure of the committee. So if there would be conflict of interest in terms of the application for ethical clearance, we want to make sure that that is addressed before we are able to issue the ethical clearance to you. Because we again stand by our principles, which is, of course, for the ethical conduct of study, most especially those studies that would require human participants. That's why in the second paragraph, as you could see in the slide right now, it says that MSUGSC IRC was established to provide independent advice, guidance, and decision on researchers or other specific research protocols involving human participants and human biologic materials. And for us to be able to provide you the best advice for your study, the ethics committee is composed of various committee members, which we have actually chosen from various fields. You might have questions what kind of studies would require ethical review, and so it's important that we need to be able to talk about that. If your questionnaires or if your work would include questionnaires and social interventions that are confidential in nature and may cause psychological, legal, economic, and other social harm, which would involve various topics such as those involving sexual behavior, illegal activities, racial biases, as well as drug use, or those that would involve vulnerable groups. Although sometimes your topics will not be that sensitive, but if your topic or if your proposed work would require or would involve a vulnerable group, in such a way, we try to make sure that you're still able to adhere to the ethical principles. And so we classify your study to be under expedited review. Or maybe those that would involve invasive procedures such as blood sampling or collection of identifiable biological specimen. While those particular studies that would not require any review or will be exempted for review, those that would not involve any human participants nor identifiable human tissue or biological samples and data, such as, say, for example, you just perform a meta-analysis, or maybe you'll perform design and fabrication of a particular machinery if you are in the engineering sector, then that would not involve any requirement for ethical review. Mainly, the thing that would probably provide you a warning that your proposed work would require an ethical review if it would really involve human participants. And so in that way, you try to ask questions whether my study would involve human participants, and if my study would also involve sensitive topics that might potentially pose risks to the participants. Now, there are various forms that you would need to fill out. The list of forms are simple, wherein you have forms 6, 7, 8, and 9, 7B and 9B. Let's try to look at what these forms are. So for form number 6, this will just simply be a checklist for all the necessary documents that you would need to provide to the IERC. That is to make sure that you will be able to submit, or you'll have a complete application packet. You'll be able to have a complete application dossier that will be provided to the ethics committee. We could not proceed with the ethical review if you lack a particular requirement. And so all the lists, or the list of forms that you would need to fill out, and the list of requirements that you would need to submit to the office or to the committee is listed in form number 6. Now, form 007, it's just basically a particular form that would ask you for certain information for review, or ask you certain information about your proposed topic. Um, Form 008 is going to be the evaluation for ethical review. I'll show to you later an example of Form 008, and then just tell you a little bit about how you could appropriately fill out the form. And then you'll have Form 009, which is essentially a review of your informed consent form. Now, if you are performing a survey involving human participants, it's important that you should also have an informed consent form, which in this case will also be evaluated by the Ethics Review Committee, because there are certain aspects that you would need to include in terms of your informed consent form. If you don't have a copy of the informed consent, or if you don't have a draft of the informed consent form, the Ethics Review Committee can also provide you a sample informed consent form to make sure that all those important aspects for informed consent are included in your informed consent. Now, for the process workflow, essentially, what will happen here is that once you've completed all the forms, and once you've submitted all the required documents coming from you, once we receive a complete application packet, the next thing that will happen to your application is that it will be coded, and each code will be different, or will be unique to a particular application. Then, of course, it will be included in the database, in the logbook of applications, of course, for archiving purposes. Then the IRC chair will determine if the review will require an expedited review, or if it's going to be for full review, or if it's going to be exemption for review. Now, with expedited review, what you would expect here is that from the time that we receive a complete application packet, expedited review will involve around 2 to 4 weeks until you will get your ethical clearance. And I am kind of proud because we are able to still provide the ethical clearance on time from the time that we receive a complete application packet. So that's the time when we count the number of days before you receive the ethical clearance. If your proposed work is exempted for review, it will just take 3 to 5 working days before we could get your ethical clearance to you, but again, with a complete submission packet. And then lastly, for full review, it will take around 4 to 8 weeks before you'll get your ethical clearance. But for full review, that will require you to present your proposed work in front of all of the committee members. Now, essentially, you'll have an application for review. The forms are available in this particular site. But if you are, yes, it's available in this particular Google Drive folder. It includes all the forms here. And we would also require a copy of your manuscript, Form 007B. That's just an additional form. That's actually a form that involves the approval of your technical panel. Form 009, it's already listed there. And then, of course, a CV of the researcher. Now you send your complete soft copy application to irc@msujensen.edu.ph. Or if you would want to apply again for ethics committee, you could send us an email that I would want to apply for ethical review. Then the committee will actually send back an email containing all the forms that you would need to comply. Next is you submit your complete hard copy of your application to the IRC staff, Abdel Banisil. If you'll submit your application packet, you could still find us now at the second floor of the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research and Extension, Y building. But starting December, we would actually move to the new office at the co-ed building right in front of STTC or beside the office of GAD, Gender and Development Office. So your review will be classified to either full, expedite, and exempted for review, and then your review will be evaluated for the time that I've said earlier. So again, you expect that for full review, it will take you 4 to 8 weeks. For expedited review, it will take you 2 to 4 weeks. Again, by the time that we receive a complete application packet. So after that, we include the decisions in the agenda of the meeting, and then we present the findings. And then lastly, after we have discussed the decision of the reviewer about your application for ethical review, then we will communicate with the researcher. We will communicate with you about the decision for the review. The decision for the review would either be accepted without any modifications, accepted with modification, or it would be disapproved. So for those decisions that would involve modification or with accepted but with modification, the staff will get in touch with you, and then you'll have to make sure that you are able to perform or do all those modifications that were suggested by the reviewer. And then lastly, once we get all those modifications, we will be able to provide you the ethical clearance. So I think that that would be all for the whole ethical process, or for the whole process involved in application for ethical review.
So, once we say technical review, ito yung inyong proposal defense. So, never submit your paper sa ethics review without first having it routed to your panel. So that if there are questions from ethics review committee members, they will ask your panel. Kasi pag sabi, ay, baka maghugas kamay ang panel kasi hindi nyo pa-route and then you want to graduate, then so hindi na kayo magpasok ng ethics. Ngayon, your paper will be questioned, especially sa mga PhD ha, you will be presenting to an international conference. So, there are conferences that they will be requiring ethics review clearance. So, patay. Even for the publication. So, it's better we follow the protocols considering that this is a CHED requirement. So, dapat may ethics. And long before, walang mga ganito, no? It's because the online, hindi masyado yung scam, no? Mga atik-atik bulatik, hindi masyado marami. But this time, because of the advancement of technology, nagiging ang daming complications na. So may mga dishonesty, kunwari nag-exist siya pero hindi pala, nag-publish lang. Pero once you have the ethics review, ito kasi ang mag-signify to the journals that it has really undergone without issues or ethics issues.
That's form 0976. So the first form that you would need to submit to us would be form 006. When you fill out the form, make sure that you leave blank the MSU GSC IRC code. The staff will identify the code that's unique to your application packet. Of course, you have to put in the title of your proposal. For terms in terms of ethical review, we often refer to your proposal as a protocol. You have to write the name of the principal investigator. That would be your name, submission date, and then this will be the name of the staff. So as I mentioned earlier, Form 006 is a review checklist. These are the certain forms that you would need to fill out, and this would come from the Ethics Review Committee. Once you send us an email signifying that you would want to apply for ethical review, all these forms will be provided to you straight away. So I suggest that you send us an email so we could provide you the list of all the forms for you to be able to download. Your study protocol, CV, all these would need to be submitted to the ethical review committee. Now, here you just have to put a check whether these are complied. C would refer to complied, NC not complied, and then NA means that it is not applicable for your study. So there are certain things here. Say, for example, the protocol describes whether the research outcomes are likely to benefit communities beyond the research population. So if it's not applicable to your study, then write down NA. If it's going to be applicable, either it's going to be complied or not complied. So that's just a pretty easy, that's a straightforward way for you to fill out the form. Next form that you would need to submit to us would be would be form number 7. That's for registration and application. It will just simply ask you about the details of your study. If it's going to be, for example, you're a graduate student, of course, you put a check here. If it's going to be a clinical trial, or if it's going to, if it's a non-clinical research, then you have to find if it's going to be social behavioral. All these are listed here. If it's not, then you'll have to specify the type of study that you are performing or that you are going to perform. So it's just simply, this form is pretty simple. You have to put a check if all the following documents are attached to the application, just to make sure that you have a complete submission packet. And then you have to sign the declaration here. In this case, this was once an example from one applicant, and then make sure that it's assigned by your mentor or your advisor. Then below that, it's just simply a part of the form that would make sure that the technical review or your panel members were already able to approve your study. Then for Form 08, this is where things will get a little bit complicated, and this is where sometimes some applicants would miss out. What you simply have to do is that for all these parts that are identified to the left side of the table, make sure that if you have the objectives, of course, you put a check and you identify the page number. Leave the reviewer comments column blank, because that's for the reviewer that'll be assigned to check your paper. So always make sure that you identify the page number where all these components would be found. If it's not there, if it's not applicable, then you put a check on NA. This will help your reviewer again find this part of your study easily, and so they would be able to perform the review as efficient as they could and as fast as they could, and make sure that the review will be done on time. For Form 009, this will actually be, this will get details coming from your informed consent form. And so there are essential elements that should be included in your informed consent form. If it's a C, that means that you've complied with that essential element that should be included in your informed consent form. NC, not complied, NA, not applicable. So those are the forms that you would need to provide to the ethics committee, as well as the list of documents that you would need to also submit for your application dossier.
So
Yes. Now, there are plenty of applications that actually involve mainly those coming from the vulnerable population, involves vulnerable population, mainly those that are below the legal age. And so they could not sign for themselves
how old nga,
if
Sir
they will be
Pao?
involved in the study. That's why we require assent form. For the assent form, it's just like the informed consent form. but the assent form will not be signed by these participants below the legal age, or if the participant is a PWD and could not sign for themselves, then the assent form would actually be required. That would be signed either by their guardian, by their parent, or any representative who will be able to sign for them. So if you have a study that would involve participants mainly below the legal age, or maybe any PWDs that could not sign for themselves, ensure that you include an assent form in your application packet.